You're listening to another edition of the Social Newscast with me, Sam Marshall. And today we have a chat to John Schooling, who is the CEO of STAG African. And they're all about student accommodation. But on the 21st of April, there was the virtual meeting held on the impact of the lockdown on higher education sector, including accommodation of students at university residences. John joins me now to unpack some of the issues related to student accommodation, but also some insight on how it will affect this particular industry. John, thank you very much for being willing to give us some of your time.
Thank you very much, Sam. Great to speak to you.
John, a virtual meeting held and higher education looked at the impact of the lockdown on the education sector, but it also factored in accommodation. Why was this such an important discussion to have?
Accommodation is intrinsically involved and related to student success. You can't separate student success from accommodation, especially in tertiary states where students are traveling long distance from home. Having student accommodation and world-class student accommodation on campus is a huge advantage to students. In fact, studies that have been conducted in America and in South Africa have found that if students are in accommodation on campus, it reduces the dropout rate by as much as 80%. Further research in South Africa has shown that if a student is in accommodation on campus, they've got a 25% chance of succeeding versus those that are not. I believe that in certain instances when the alternative to on-campus student accommodation is not a accommodation in another place, but accommodation very far away, another acceptable place, but accommodation far away in possibly very, very a non-conducive circumstance where there might not be running water, there might be a limit on electricity, and they don't have access to Wi-Fi. Someone in those circumstances, of course, has a very, very low chance of actually passing.
Now, I mean, we're having this conversation after the president made announcements around how we're moving forward during this lockdown period. I'm sure, like me, South African, you were watching the screens. What was the first thing that popped in your mind, John, in terms of the extension of this lockdown and how we will start to phase back industries?
I'm deeply concerned. We've got 300,000 students at our universities right now, 300,000 that do not have accommodation. Now, that figure just slips so glibly and off of your tongue. But 300,000 is a huge number of people's lives. And students represent 5% of the most educated part of our population. There's also a direct correlation between the country's success and wealth and the level of tertiary education. We as a continent only have 5% of our people have some form of tertiary education versus America at 35%, Europe at 30%, Russia at 30%, etc. So there's a direct correlation between the country's level of tertiary education and the country's wealth. And when I talk about wealth, I'm not just talking about financial wealth. I'm talking about a lot of other aspects which one could include in wealth. And that is personal happiness, personal satisfaction, social wealth, social well-being, etc., etc., etc. So the lockdown, which is going to slow down the process of providing new accommodation, is going to be devastating to the current student accommodation crisis that we're already facing. STAG African, for example, is busy building the biggest student accommodation facility, a student village at the University of Fort Hare in the Eastern Cape, in a little town called Alice. So we built in 2,047 beds there. Those beds need to be completed by the 1st of January or 1st of February when students go back. If they aren't completed, those students will again not have decent accommodation. So this lockdown, we've lost a month already. Construction at the moment is placed at number 2 or number 3 of the lift up parts of the economy. So I think we've got to take a very serious look at that and move construction higher. It's critically important that the student accommodation is completed by the time students go back to university next year.
But on the back of this, John, you've also asked the construction industry. I mean, we can unpack the reasons why it's important and we can probably debate at length why this phased-in approach. And I'm sure you don't agree that we need a phased-in approach. Your argument is that construction needs to be moved up a little bit higher.
Correct. I understand exactly where the government's coming from. I understand that, thank God, our government and our president is looking at this from a scientific perspective. They're working on the math, the facts. The scientific evidence indicates that a phased uplifting is the right way to go. I agree totally and completely with that sentiment. I just believe that they should relook at construction and maybe raise it up, if that's at all possible.
But you've also asked the construction industry to go back to the drawing board, to look at how they put these buildings together, to look at new technology, to factor in green building practices.
Correct, Sam. Sam, our industry, Sam, by the way, notwithstanding the fact that I'm a property developer, I started building 34, 35 years ago. So I understand construction. We were a construction company. Then we became a development and construction company. And eventually decided to outsource construction initially to our own company. We separated the two because they were just different businesses. But now we outsource to other construction companies. We are working very closely with a medium-sized construction company in the Eastern Cape and with a very large construction company in Johannesburg, where we say, throw the rule books away and let's start this whole conversation over again. We don't want to adapt the construction industry. We don't want it to change. We want it to be fundamentally become a different industry completely, where we look at the provision of accommodation from a different perspective. I love using the analogy of Elon Musk and Tesla cars, and they're not the only ones that have done this. But I'm talking about a revolution in construction as Tesla, Elon Musk and Tesla have done in the automotive industry. Volkswagen, for example, the biggest automaker in the world, has incrementally improved their cars over the last 50, 60, 70 years, and their cars are much better than what they've ever been. When they entered into the electric car space, they carried on with the same model, but Tesla came along and said, but there is no model, there's no holy grail, there's nothing. We don't know how to build cars. We've never built a car before. So let's start completely from the beginning. As a result, Tesla, which is a relatively new car manufacturer, Tesla has got a market capitalization the last time I looked of 50 billion more than the biggest car maker in the world, which is Volkswagen. Volkswagen is terrified of Tesla because Tesla does not look at the car the same way as they look at it. They see that car as something completely different. In actual fact, the CEO of Volkswagen said that Tesla looks at the car as a handheld device rather than a means of transport. It's a fundamentally different way of looking at it. I'm saying that the construction industry, with our inputs, has to look at construction completely differently. We cannot carry on building the way that we've been building in the past, hoping for a different result. We cannot accept that every single year we can just accept that that construction goes up by between 8 and 12% per year, whatever that figure is. In actual fact, we are saying through the implementation of innovation and green building practice through use of innovative building technology, for example, we in actual fact are looking to dramatically reduce the cost of construction. Now, Sam, let me give you a crazy example. 40 odd years ago, I was at Stellenbosch University. We had a computer building that housed a mainframe computer. That mainframe computer was massive. Today, it could cost anything up to 50 million rand to build the same computer. The firm that I'm talking to you on right now has got 100 times more power than that computer had. But it cost 16,000 rand versus 50 million. However, the building that housed that computer still exists. And if the construction industry were to build a new building right next door, they would use exactly the same building technology that they used 60, 70 years ago. And they're happy that that building has gone up in price from, at that stage, 168,000 to 200,000 to build. And they're quite happy that that same building costs 15 million today. I'm saying that's not acceptable. If technology has allowed computers to become thousands of times stronger and more powerful and faster than what they were and cost less, how can we accept the construction cost is going to continue to go up? The reason is because we're not applying technology and innovative thought to the building industry. We at STAG African have now said that's got to stop. We have to reduce the cost of construction and in our industry particularly because the crisis in student accommodation, the crisis of cost. The students, crisis of affordability. The students, nor the institutes, nor the government can afford the true cost of a greenfield bed, which at the moment is running between 270 and 550,000 rand for a bed. We want to see that reduced to 150 to 180,000, and we're very, very close to achieving that through the use of innovative building technology and optimal architectural design. The two work hand in hand.
John, one of the biggest problems are everything you're saying makes perfect sense. But if you get the experts in the room, they're going to disagree. They'll argue for days on end why the costs have escalated. They will throw figures on the table and they say, well, this is the reason why we haven't used these new technologies, whether it's government regulation, whether it's import costs of these new technologies. What do you say to those individuals that are finding reasons to still keep these construction costs incredibly high?
I actually would say to them that you actually may be the experts in historical way of constructing, but you're not an expert in what we're going to. You see, we believe in a business philosophy of the possible versus the probable. When someone says to me, this is how we've done it in the past and we must do it in the future and it's okay to cost more, then I said, well, your business philosophy is the business philosophy of the probable. Volkswagen's business philosophy is the philosophy of the probable. Tesla's philosophy and our philosophy is the philosophy of the possible rather than the probable. The probable will tell you that we have to carry on doing what we've done successfully in the past. The person who believes in the possible says we have to do something completely differently. So I was talking to a very, very successful construction company director and managing director the other day, and he said to me, but John, I'm perfectly happy to carry on doing building work the way that I've done it in the past. I'm successful. I'm doing well. So I said to him, Andrew, your very success is going to become your destruction. While you carry on doing business as normal, someone's going to start up right next to you, and he's going to disrupt this industry completely as we are doing at the moment. And by the time you realize that Tesla have made a car that is completely different to the way that you've been making cars, you're going to be too late. You're going to have missed the boat. Fortunately, he turned around, phoned us back. He was a bit offended by my approach. He phoned me back a week later and said, can we meet? I traveled all the way to his hometown where they're building in East London, where they're located in East London, and we sat down and he said, okay, I've got it. We're going to completely and absolutely change 100%. So he was willing, as a medium-sized, very, very successful company, to look at this completely differently. Now, those are the kind of people that I want to deal with. I don't want to deal with dinosaurs. I don't want to deal with people that say to me that because bricks and mortar were 3000 BC, by the way, we can still carry on using the same technology today in the 21st century.
John,
if you want to carry on doing that, be my guest.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question in terms of the actual cost during this lockdown. Obviously, because the accommodation business for students is a business, is an industry. And on the periphery of that, there are a ton of service providers who benefit directly and indirectly because of student accommodation. How have they
Right.
been affected by the lockdown and potentially this extended lockdown period?
I think it's been devastating to them as it has been to everyone else. In the construction industry, no work, no pay, unfortunately. So all the contractors, we've got 550 people on our building site. Many of them come from an area where the unemployment rate is 94%. Many of them are small, medium enterprises. We were paying and spending 15 million rand a month into that specific economy. The economic knock-on effect of that is 6 times, so that's close to 120 million rand. That isn't happening at the moment. So the supply chain has been closed down completely. So every single person in that supply chain, so while we employ directly 550 people on site, indirectly in the broader industry that supplies us, although they're not directly working exclusively for us, but there are probably 6,000 people out there that partially depend and benefit directly and indirectly from our construction site going on at Alice, for example. This, of course, can be multiplied across the entire industry. The people that rely on the construction industry, for example, have been completely devastated. The people that work for different small companies that supply services in the operation of those of student accommodation, for example, the cleaning staff, they haven't got any work at the moment. The security people, that's been a lockdown, they haven't got any work anymore either. So all those service providers to the operations have been devastatingly affected by this. Again, it's unfortunately the price of the crisis that we're in at the moment, but the sooner we can uplift this, the better. The sooner we can get people back to work, the better. The sooner that we can get our economy together and back together and working again, the better. But I must say, Sam, out of all of this, there is an incredible positive that I'm really, really hoping is going to come through. And that is that there has been a feeling of solidarity among South Africans for the first time in many, many, many years. I've got a feeling that we're actually more aware of each other. I'm personally really, really, really concerned about the plight of people out there, people that are really struggling. I'm really, really concerned about that. And I feel that all of us have now broaden our horizons from just plain need to suddenly understanding that in actual fact, we all interrelated and we all actually need each other to succeed. I need the construction industry to succeed. I need universities to succeed. My business needs them to succeed. So we are becoming aware that we stand together or we fall together. And that's a positive as far as I'm concerned.
John, thank you very much. From your lips to God's ears. That's John
Thank you, Sam.
Schooling, who's the CEO at Student Accommodation Group, STAG African, talking to us about a matter I must admit that I haven't really thought about and how the accommodation industry is affected. So, John, thank you very much and stay safe.
Thank you, Sam. Good night.
For more stories like these, go to www.social-tv.co.za, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on our social mediums.